It's the Morning Star Drive 117.8. You soaring up with sky, now's the time, don't delay. I'm sitting in my ride and it's time to fly. So let's realign, just listen and fill your mind.
I'm burning with desire and the passion. Nobody can stop me when I'm like this. I got my head in the zone, you know. I'm on the Morning Star Drive, you know.
Hey guys, how's it going? It is Wednesday, March 24th, and this is the Morning Star Drive on 117.8. We're on YouTube, so make sure to subscribe, follow us on SoundCloud, and make sure to support us on Patreon. So what is happening today? We're going to get some coronavirus updates, current news from around the world, and of course, realizing from the Tuesday morning message. All right, guys, it is the middle of the week. It is Wednesday. Hope you guys are having an amazing week so far. Just thankful all of you joining us here on the Morning Star Drive. Looking forward to a great, awesome service tonight by the head leaders. And guys, it's going to be awesome. And I'm really, really excited about this Wednesday service because if you don't know, I help out some head leaders too working on these sermons, but it's just getting more and more deep. And more, what's the right word? More and more like the responsibility is coming on the head leaders. Like tomorrow is all basically, it's just 23 Proverbs, but you have to make it into a sermon, which is wild. And I think it's going to be awesome. More of the style of the head leaders should be coming out as they're able to make better and better sermons. So I'm really looking forward to it. And I know that as weeks and weeks go on, they're just going to get better and better. So super, super happy about this. All right. I just want to remind everyone, keep liking and commenting, and I want to hear from you guys and see how you're doing. Write your questions, requests, and testimonies. I am definitely willing to put all of it on this podcast. Yesterday, another vlog, really, really good, successful one. It talks about my experience in Malaysia, a crazy experience when my car broke down in the middle of the freeway. But, man, I just had these amazing Malaysians, didn't even know me, couldn't even speak English, but they helped me, and I was like, man, I could really move here. The people here are so amazing, and your response to it has been awesome. So if you haven't seen it, go ahead to the Espresso with Sky YouTube channel. Go ahead and check that out. All right. Remember, this week's Sunday edition, I interviewed Eddie Kwan from America, so make sure to catch that interview. And of course, next Sunday edition, we'll be meeting another member from somewhere else around the world. So look forward to another inspiring and amazing interview. Also, Open Bible Study on Monday about the spiritual world is already posted on Patreon, so go ahead and check that out. That's the second spiritual world lecture. Anything else? Nope, nothing else. It's just a great week. So let's get into the feature artist of the day. Today is a wonderful Wednesday, and we're going to start with RJR from Japan. Well, who is it? It's Rising Japan Radio, and we're going to start off with probably their most popular song on their SoundCloud channel, which is Universe. After this, we're going to hear from PGY from the Paper Music Associates in Korea. This song is a popular one, also Dr. Rain. And of course, last but not least, we're going to listen to the Sumney Boys. And the Sumney Boys from their Tales of a Longing Hearts album. We're going to listen to a really, really good song called Facepalm. And just recently, I heard the story behind it. It's a crazy story, guys, but you guys have to wait later to hear where that story of facepalm comes from. You know what a facepalm is? Like when someone makes a mistake, you put your palm and you hit your forehead like, oh gosh, what are you doing? That's a facepalm. So that's what it's actually talking about. But either way, I hope you guys enjoy this music from our amazing members from around the world making just great music, inspired by the Holy Spirit and doing it according to the Word. So everyone, let's listen to these member artists and make sure you keep them in your prayers.
was sitting on the ground, few feet across from you. Then my brain shut down. Who am I? Oh no, I wrote all the things I wanted to say, but my tongue went hiding in, ran away. Oh no, now you're looking at me like I'm somebody crazy. Swear I'm just a normal person. Okay, maybe I have all your pictures on my wall in my room, my telephone, my bathroom, on my mama too. Oh, I wish it was easy to tell you my feelings. I don't want you looking at me like I'm silly. I'm so down when you give cold shoulder to me. I get excited when you always call out to me. What you feel about that? All the times I've been, don't say what I feel, give myself a face palm.
Should I say something? I don't know, man. What should I do? I just want you to know me, want you to notice me. There's a lot on my mind, but this process is so slowly. I had to sit back down, I couldn't really even think. I felt so stupid, I was just looking at you and you was looking at me like dang. I really just lost my chance, lost to a poem with a snack in my hand. I was just so down, man, I felt like a clown, couldn't even let it go that I frozen up again. Felt like I failed, but I've never given up. Took a big L and I didn't come with clutch. It's something about you that gets me all stuck. You made me so nervous, like I wish it was easy to tell you my feelings. I don't want you looking at me like I'm silly.
I'm so down when you give cold shoulder to me. I get excited when you always call out to me. What you feel about that? All the times I've been, don't say what I feel, give myself a face palm. I'm so down when you give cold shoulder to me. I get excited when you always call out to me. What you feel about that? All the times I've been, don't say what I feel, give myself a face palm.
Wish I can do it again.
Give myself a face
Maybe
palm.
next time we'll work, it will be different.
Give myself a face palm.
I wish I can do it again.
Give myself a face
Maybe
palm.
next time we'll work, it will be different.
Give myself a face palm.
I wish I can do it again. Maybe next time we'll work, it will be different. I wanna tell you what I've been holding in. Maybe next time we'll work, it will be different. Face, palm, face.
Give myself a
Face, palm, face.
Give myself a
Face, palm, face.
Give myself a
Face, palm, face.
Give myself a.
And that was the Sumney Boys from America with the song Facepalm from the Tales of a Longing Heart album. Before that, PGY from the Paper Music Associates in Korea with Dr. Rain and RJR. Rising Japan Radio with the song Universe. All right, so let's get into some news going around the world. Let's see what God is doing. We'll start off with the coronavirus updates. First, let's look at the global numbers. We have reached 124 million cases in the world, 2.7 million deaths at a 2.2% mortality rate. Top 6 countries going by daily infection rates. We have the U.S. with 30.5 million cases, 555,000 deaths at 1.82%. Brazil, 11.9 million cases, 294,000. They are creeping up to 300,000 deaths at 2.45%. India, 11.6 million cases, 160,000 deaths with 1.37%. France, 4.2 million cases, 92,000 deaths at 2.15%. Turkey, 3 million cases, 30,000 deaths at 1%, and Poland, 2 million cases, 49,000 deaths at 2.38%. Sweden, only country not to go in a full lockdown, down to 1.78%, and Belgium at 2.71%. Now, let's take a look at daily infection rates, and this is a big turn of events. Okay, Brazil on top, 47,000 cases, and in second place, India has jumped to number 2 with 47,000 cases also, and the US for the first time is at number 3 at 39,000 cases, France with 30,000, Poland 21, and Turkey with 20,000 cases in a day. Over here, Southeast Asia, Philippines overtaking everyone, 7,700 cases in a day, and then Indonesia drops down to 4,300. So there's like over 3,000 difference between Indonesia and Philippines now. And then, of course, the Malaysia, where I'm at, is down to 1,300 cases. So that's some good news for all of us here in Malaysia. Let's go into things happening around the world. Top 3 newsworthy things and things that we can really see how God is working. So we're going to start with China. Okay, so we've heard in the past about the Uyghurs and how they've been treating, and they said it's basically defined as a genocide, what they're doing to the Uyghur Muslims in China, in what's it called, Xinjiang, I think that's the region. But what's happening? Western countries are now putting sanctions on China over these rights abuses. So several Western countries have imposed sanctions on officials in China over rights abuses against the mostly Muslim Uyghur minority group. China has detained Uyghurs at camps in the northwest region of Xinjiang, where allegations of torture, forced labor, and sexual abuse have emerged. The sanctions were introduced as a coordinated effort by the European Union, the UK, US, and Canada. China responded with its own sanctions on Europe officials. Right? And it has denied the allegations of abuse, claiming the camps are re-education facilities used to combat terrorism. But the UK Foreign Secretary Dominic Raab said the treatment of Uyghurs amounted to appalling violations of the most basic human rights, and the EU has not imposed new sanctions on China over human rights abuses since the 1989 Tiananmen Square crackdown, when troops in Beijing opened fire on pro-democracy protesters. So what do we know about the sanctions? The sanctions, including travel bans and asset freezes, target senior officials in Xinjiang who have been accused of serious human rights violations against Uyghur Muslims, and those targeted have been named as there's like names of the director of the Xinjiang Public Security Bureau and the local police force, also another member of Xinjiang's Communist Party Standing Committee, and the EU says that this person holds a key political position in charge of overseeing the detention of Uyghurs. There's also the party secretary of Xinjiang Production and Construction Corps, and a state-owned economic and paramilitary organization, and of course the former deputy Communist Party head in Xinjiang, also accused, who's accused of having held a key political position in overseeing the running of the camps, right? So the Xinjiang Production and Construction Corps Public Security Bureau, which is in charge of implementing XPCC policies on security matters, including the management of detention centers. So Mr. Raab called the abuse of Uyghur Muslims in Xinjiang one of the worst human rights crises of our time. And he says, I think it's clear that by acting with our partners, 30 of us in total, we are sending the clearest message to the Chinese government that the international community will not turn a blind eye to such serious and systematic violations of basic human rights, and that we will act in concert to hold those responsible to account, he told fellow parliamentarians. Now, in a statement, the U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken said China was committing genocide and crimes against humanity, and the U.S. said it sanctioned several others for their connection to the arbitrary detention and severe physical abuse, among other serious human rights abuses. Canada's foreign ministry said mounting evidence points to systemic state-led human rights violations by Chinese authorities, and the sanctions came amid increasing international scrutiny over China's treatment of Uyghurs. So what is China accused of? More than 1 million Uyghurs and other minorities are estimated to have been detained in camps in Xinjiang. And Xinjiang lies in the northwest of China and is the country's biggest region. And like Tibet, it is autonomous, meaning, in theory, it has some powers of self-governance. But in practice, both face major restrictions by the central government. Uyghurs living in the region speak their own language, similar to Turkish, and see themselves as culturally and ethnically close to Central Asian nations. The Chinese government has been accused of carrying out forced sterilizations on Uyghur women and separating children from their families. And a BBC investigation published in February contained first-hand testimony of systemic rape, sexual abuse, and torture of detainees. One woman testified that women were removed from their cells every night and raped by one or more masked Chinese men. A former guard at one of the camps who spoke on condition of anonymity described torture and food deprivation of inmates. So China has banned the BBC World News Television over coverage of the Uyghur issue and coronavirus, and the country initially denied the existence of the camps before defending them as a necessary measure against terrorism. And it has denied allegations of human rights abuses. So how has China responded to the sanctions? China on Monday said the sanctions initially announced by the EU were based on nothing but lies and disinformation, and it said it would sanction 10 people and 4 entities in Europe that severely harmed China's sovereignty and interests and maliciously spread lies and disinformation in response. So those affected by China's sanctions are barred from entering the country or doing business with it. German politician Reinhard Bütikofer, who chairs the European Parliament's delegation to China, was among the most high-profile officials on China's list, right? So Mr. Zen's, the reports were extensive on alleged abuses in Xinjiang, and the reports last year on the forced sterilization of Uyghurs prompted international calls for the UN to investigate. State media has called this infamous anti-China figure, like who China calls as anti-China, and accused of spreading lies. So it is terrible what is going on, and thank God, multiple 30 countries in the West are now going against it. But I do think it's got to reach all the way to like the Chinese federal government, because this is terrible. And I can't believe it's been going on for so long. So that's something that we really need to see, and hope that there's going to be more sanctions and more things that will go against these human rights abuses. Second thing on the news today is another terrible thing. We're going to another communist country of Russia, right? And it comes with the coronavirus and how Russia glosses over its corona death toll. Okay, the coronavirus death toll is being glossed over. So protecting themselves for a shift on the COVID ward is a process the medics at Perm Regional Hospital have fine-tuned over months of practice. They climb quickly into disposable suits before strapping plastic masks tight to their faces, and a colleague then helps them on with a double layer of rubber gloves taped to their wrists. Right? This is what happens in these hospitals. And a year into the pandemic, the virus this team are battling is familiar, but their careful daily routine is a reminder of the risk. It was last autumn that the coronavirus struck hardest in Perm. This is in Russia, on its sweep from Moscow across the regions, and the number of sick and dead shot up. Now, there is very little talk in Russia of the death toll from the coronavirus. And the full data revealed by excess mortality is not a secret, but it's never highlighted, and the preliminary tally published each day by the government significantly underplays the impact. So what are the names and the numbers? Okay? So we see people, falling sick, classic symptoms of the coronavirus, right? And the security guard, as you see on the TV in the region of Perm, began posting a diary on social media calling for ambulances that never came, right? And of course, many people are talking about they could have been saved, right? Remembering how people, like grandsons and people who were healthy before received the coronavirus, didn't get any help and they died, right? In the autumn, right? Last autumn, the surge of coronavirus infections, there was 2,388 people that died of the virus in Perm, according to the statistic agency. But the excess death data for Perm, the number of people dying above the expected norm, is double that figure for those 4 months, according to the same source. Meanwhile, the city government count has only reached 1,869 for the whole of the pandemic, right? But if you look at excess mortalities, you take a look at the last 5 years, what is the average number of deaths that are happening in that time? And you see that it is way higher than the average, right? And this is what they're looking at. So if you look at 2 Russian cities, Moscow, the excess of mortality in Moscow is over 28,000 deaths, okay? In Perm is over 5,600 deaths, but they're only reporting 1,869, right? So this is the demographer's story, right? So there's one demographer, and his name is Alexei Rashka, and he says he doesn't even look at those numbers that are being reported. He claims that the daily data in Russia has been smoothed and rounded and lowered to look better. So officials have always denied this, right? So Alexei worked at Rostet for 6 years until he says he was forced to leave last summer for being too vocal about the coronavirus. But he says Rostet's numbers are critical to assessing the real cost of the pandemic, and like many experts, he uses excess mortality as the best indicator. So if we look at deaths in Russia in 2020, right? The deaths in Russia in 2020, the excess mortality is 320,000 just in 2020. But the registered COVID is only over 150,000. And, so if you think about that, it is less than just the registered people with coronavirus. Not the deaths, right? Just the registered COVID ones is like 150 something thousand. But the actual excess mortality is over 320,000. So this demographer basically said, if Russia stops at 500,000 excess deaths, that will be a good scenario. Right? This is what the freelance demographer is arguing. He calculates that the current death toll is pushing 450,000, right? Which is way bigger than the 94,000 deaths published online on Friday, right, by Russia's COVID headquarters. So think about this, guys. The excess mortality in 2020 is 320,000. And the registered coronavirus is over 100, like say 165,000. And COVID headquarters is only registering like 60,000, right? So he's saying there's over 450,000 deaths by coronavirus, and there's only 94,000 that has been reported. So even the lower number is rarely cited by officials also. So in the coronavirus, you choose between the economy and people's lives, and mostly older people's lives, right? And this is the how Alexei sees the government's rationale. So they met in this reporter met with him in a coffee bar. Since there's no lockdown, right? Since spring, there's been no lockdown in Russia. So the Russian state chose the economy, right? So they won't say it, but it's very, very obvious what the government is doing. So, and the reason why, you got to kind of look at this, the reason why they do it this way too in Russia. So Alexei Rashka, this demographer suggests there's another reason why Russians don't dwell on the dead like other countries. Because this country has experienced terrible turmoil in its recent past with the collapse of the USSR. So Europeans or Americans have not lived through bad times like the 90s in Russia. And the demographer points out it was worse in the Great Depression in America in comparison to those times, which Russians still remember. So this coronavirus crisis is nothing. So it's not nothing for the tens of thousands of families directly affected, of course, but Russia's official narrative carried into living rooms, via state TV, is that it's handled this pandemic better than most, that the country is on its way to recovery just as Europe slides into another miserable cycle of restrictions. And the awkward numbers here are just basically glossed over, and the stories of the dead just don't get told, right? And you kind of get an idea that, yeah, they've been through some terrible times, and they don't want to think about those things. They just don't want to, right? And that's why the government just kind of glosses over them and says, hey, we're doing okay, and making the morale feel okay. But they're looking at the numbers being very, very close to America's numbers, right? And America may be over-reported more than anything else, okay? So that's Russia glossing over it. They've only reported like 95,000 deaths when the excess deaths, you're going towards 500,000, which is close to America, okay? And this the last thing we're going to talk about is what's happening in Israel. There's another election, right? So the morning after the Israeli electoral circus. So Israeli is stuck in an electoral Groundhog Day, with each election producing more of the same. Israel is about to hold its fourth parliamentary election in 2 years. So 4 times in 2 years, guys. Since 2019, it has emerged from one chaotic electoral campaign season only to plunge into another. But Israeli national elections were not always the electoral whirlwind they are today, where a dozen plus parties run blitz campaigns colored by marketing gimmicks and populist sloganeering and marred by vicious condemnations and personal attacks. So during the first 3 decades after its independence, Israel held national elections once every 4 years, with labor Zionists running dull, rigid campaigns against the louder, more extreme revisionist Zionists, with the victory of the former almost always assured in advance. So as a ruling party that controlled most pillars of the state, the Labor Party, then called Mapai, and its junior partners won each time with great margins amid successive wars and a continuous unprecedented immigration influx. But Labor's winning streak came to an end in 1977 with the revisionist Likud party won the most seats and formed a government with a broad coalition of new liberals, radicalized laborites, and religious Zionists. So the subsequent political and economic liberalization in Israel paved the way for the decentralization of its political party system and the emergence of new parties reflecting the new religious, the new ethnic and social divides. So generals and radical settlers also managed to secure a bigger role for themselves on the political scene, and the more parties entered the Knesset, right, the tougher it became for 2 main parties, the Labor and the Likud, to establish and maintain coalition governments. They became hostage to the narrow interests of each coalition partner, be it religious, secular, or whatever it was, extreme right, extreme left, settler support, whatever it is, right? So in 2014, the two parties raised the threshold for entering parliament to 3.25% of the vote in the hope of reducing their dependence on the smaller parties, but the problem of coalition building persisted with more stubborn, medium-sized parties. So with the exception of the 1977 elections that saw a radical switch to the Likud under this new party, and the 1992 elections that allowed for a temporary switch back to Labor, most elections produced much chagrin, but no change in the main axis driving Israel's national security, right? So it's really interesting to see that there's another election going on right now. And it seems like ever since the past, there has been political turmoil, and there used to be two major parties. Like in the U.S., you have the Democrats and the Republicans, and they had that in Israel. But now, what's happening is you have all these small parties getting like pieces of the pie, and it's becoming very, very segregated, very diverse, and a lot of mid-sized and small parties that they have to kind of adhere to, right? So it's very interesting to see that there is not like a massive majority or two-party system, right? So if you look at the 1999 elections, the first of two direct elections to the premiership paved the way for the decisive victory of Labor's candidate and Israel's most decorated general. His name is Ehud Barak, who basically reprimanded Netanyahu for giving up a lot to the Palestinians without getting much in return. But soon enough, this Barak character, his military arrogance got the better of him as he tried and failed to impose an unfair take-it-or-leave-it solution on the Palestinians at Camp David summit hosted by President Bill Clinton in 2000. So the 1999 election was the last one that the Labor Party won, and from then on, its popularity dwindled, partly because of the follies of its leaders, partly because Israelis grew even more hawkish, especially after the second they call it the Second Intifada, and partly because over time, confident and prosperous Israel stopped caring about peace, right? So you see that this Labor Party has lackluster performance at the polls, and it also has to do with this Netanyahu on the other side, his evil genius and his wicked alliance with U.S. President Donald Trump after 2017. That's what they're saying. So the party went from winning 24 seats in 2015 to only 6 seats in 2019. And right now it only holds 2 seats, right? So it is quite crazy what's going to go on. So we'll see what is going to happen with this new election, the fourth one in 2 years, which is really, really unstable. So let's see what happens and what people are actually going to be wanting more than anything else. So yeah, guys, it's four elections in 2 years. Imagine if that happened in the U.S. That would be crazy, right? Because, you see how crazy it already is right now. Imagine if you had 4 of them going on with like Trump versus like Biden 4 times. That would be nuts. Right, there'll be no end to how crazy like the people would be going right now. So that's Israel, and that's news over there. So I hope there's we get to see what's happening around the world. We get to see how God is shaking things up, and we get to see as we're praying and setting these conditions more and more each and every day, how God is cleaning up the world and the systems. Okay, so that is the end of the current news, the top 3 news, and also the coronavirus updates, which means we're going to get into time, a little bit more of a spiritual time. We're going to sing praises, give glory to the Holy Trinity. We're going to start with Let's Make God and the Holy Spirit Rejoice, and then we'll go into the light of hope, and of course we'll end and we'll break it down with I Believe. So as one body of the Morning Star Drive, let us spend this time giving glory to the Holy Trinity.
Love overflows, never ending. surely rejoice. Dun, 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 dun. Dun, 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 dun. Everyone clap all together. Everyone sing. Everyone get on your feet and dance. God and the Holy Spirit will surely rejoice. I am leaving, turning to the new history, to God's history of providence. There I will go. Providence is the ideal world, the world of freedom and truth, on the green pastures where streams of water overflow. I will live with the Lord, only loving Him, right here in this place, only for His will. Light of hope shine in Providence, still flowers bloom, still the fruits in Providence thrive, because we have the word of the Lord. Oh, the light of hope shines bright.
God's providence history, the last one of salvation, where flowers bloom and fruits grow, heaven on earth history. Rough windstorms may come and go, eternal hope history. I shall follow only the Lord, I shall love Him eternally.
Shall I live resenting others, resenting my own brothers? All of you who follow the Lord, let us never change. With never changing hearts, let us love and run to the Lord. It is only His word that becomes a light of hope. Stormy waves of trials seem to come endlessly. We may run and run, there's no end to see. Light of hope shine in Providence, still flowers bloom, still the fruits in Providence thrive, because we have the word of the Lord. Oh, the light of hope shines bright in Providence, still flowers bloom, still the fruits in Providence thrive, because we have the word of the Lord. Oh, the light of hope shines bright. Oh, the light of hope shines bright.
God's providence history, the last one of salvation, where flowers bloom and fruits grow, heaven on earth history. Rough windstorms may come and go, eternal hope history. I shall follow only the Lord, I shall love Him eternally. God's providence history, the last one of salvation. Where flowers bloom and fruits grow, heaven on earth history. But when storms may come and go, eternal hope history. I shall follow only the Lord, I shall love him eternally. God's providence history, the last one of salvation. Where flowers bloom and fruits grow, heaven on earth history. But when storms may come and go, eternal hope history. I shall follow only the Lord, I shall love him eternally.
As I am walking on this road that leads to the city of gold, the Lord's sail is planted in my center, and on the Lord's wings I will rapture higher. I believe that the will has been fulfilled. I believe that my spirit rose with him. I believe I'm living in the city of gold, and in this life I will always give thanks as I rise towards that place. With the condition of the Lord, God's dream finally came true. As for me, I'll walk this path unchanging. I'll do what I must, and I'll never turn back. I believe that the will has been fulfilled. I believe that my spirit rose with him. I believe I'm living in the city of gold, and in this life I will always give thanks as I rise towards that place. I look only to the Lord. I'll fulfill the will and live by his word. And if harsh winds may blow, I will stand ever strong. God's will I shall fulfill. I believe we have gained the victory. I believe as time passes all we'll see. I believe I'll stand firm even though the wind may blow, never shaken. I'll fulfill heaven's will. God's history of love has won. God's history of love has won.
And that was I Believe. Yes, a classic and a great song. I hope you guys were really inspired that one as I was. Before that was Light of Hope. And of course, Let's Make God and the Holy Spirit Rejoice. All right, guys. So it is time for some word study for today. It is. It's a time for word study. And I really hope that all of you guys listen really well to the the Tuesday pre-dawn message. And it was another goodie, right? Especially this week, it's about learning how to discern well. And I think this is something that this is the one thing that we need almost every single day, and sometimes every single moment, to really think about how can we discern properly. And we're getting it through the word of how to discern properly. Okay, so I really like the beginning point. He's like, it's only Tuesday pre-dawn, which means that from Sunday message, which ended at around what, about 1 p.m., until Tuesday pre-dawn, which means it's a day and a half. He said he had 67 things that he needed to discern. Isn't that crazy, guys? 67 things. And when he talks about these things, he says these are not personal things, right? Because we might think to ourselves, well, of course, there's like tons of things we have to discern. He's like, no, it's not about personal stuff. Because my life belongs to God. These personal things aren't even important to me, right? These are God's things. And because they're God's things, it needs more discernment. It requires responsibility. And these are decisions for God's, like the things that have to do with God. And he's like, yeah, the moment it comes, he said it even in the message. Now we're getting the message of discernment. You guys are going to have tons of things you need to discern really well. And I know that a lot of us here probably are discerning tons of things too. Maybe, I'm not sure if we're going to have 67 things, like not a personal thing, but like a godly thing or things that we're doing at church or newcomers or our own lives, whatever it is. Well, I couldn't believe 67 things in a day and a half. That is crazy. Right? And I just love how he's like, it's not about personal things. This is about, because my life belongs to God. I'm doing what God wants, right? I'm doing the things, that decisions for God's work. And because it's God's work, I need God's wisdom. And this is his responsibility. It's not like God is just saying, do this, do this, do this. No, he's checking it. He's questioning, he's analyzing and seeing what is the best thing to do. So we learned that on Sunday. We need to learn how to question and analyze, right? Question and analyze. And these are two things that he said that this is how we have to discern really well, right? So, what about, when he talked about how important it is to prophesy, I was kind of trying to think to myself, I was like, why do you need to prophesy, right? And he's like, if you prophesy, you can discern way better. Why? Because you know what's going to happen. Which means you can discern. If you know something in the future bad's going to happen, then you have the ability to discern, should I do this or not, right? And I know that a lot of us do have the ability to prophesy at some level because sometimes we can see where something is going. We do, right? Sometimes when we know that if we keep going a certain way, we're going to sit and we're like, oh man, I know what direction this is going. Which means if you know the future, where it's leading to, then it's better not to do it. That's what real discernment is. I should probably not do this because it's going in the wrong direction. And a lot of things that we do, we realize, ooh, this is not going to a good place. Aren't there things? And then there's other things where we realize like, oh man, if I do this, I'm going to suffer, but it's going to lead to something good, which means we can discern really well there too and say, well, you know what? I should do this then. Right? And what about when he talked about like, this is how Solomon in his wisdom, he could discern really well. And you know how he discerned between fake flowers and real flowers? And in my head, I'm just like going, touch them because it'd be plastic. But it'd be like, wait a second. Like even the time of Solomon, there's no plastic. There was no plastic back then, right? Well, like how would you discern between real and fake flowers? Right? Especially if you have like all around the palace, he has like beautiful flowers here and there. How would you do it? Just by looking at them. And some seems like, he's got that wisdom. He's like, just see if there's any pollen. And we'd be like, okay, so how would you know if there's pollen? Well, are bees going to them or not? Are they pollinating? Are butterflies going to them or not? You're like, oh, that makes total sense. But imagine if someone told you, are they fake or not? You would have no idea. You'd be sitting like, I don't know. They all look real. But just the level of Sunseem's thinking, just talking about that is like, it's incredible, the level of his thinking, right? And this is all coming through the word. It's all what he's learned all his life. What about when he talked about, and this is something that it's for all of us here too, is mediocre faith cannot get you salvation, right? Salvation is not as easy as we think. Right? It's not just something where I believe in it's done like a Sunday Christian. It says salvation is not that easy. It's not that easy, right? And it's something that we have to hear the true words of God and we have to put them into action, believe in the one that is sent. Is that hard? Well, it could be hard if you don't want to believe, right? But it's very, very easy when you do believe, right? When you do love God, it is easy. But when you don't, it's really, really hard, right? And that's why a lot of times we won't get it. We won't understand. When people love God, they're not going to understand why it's like, come on, you just believe. Don't you want to go to heaven? Don't you want blessing? Don't you want this? And we think to ourselves that, yeah, it sounds easy, but it's not as easy as we think, right? So I liked it because this has to do with exactly my age. He says, when you hit your 40s, you know how true something is, and all the difficulty of the past is worth it. I'm like, yeah, it's so true. I've been in this history for 23 years, and when you're going through the difficulty, sometimes you wonder, man, is this really going to amount to anything? But you realize in the end, all those conditions and things that you set, when you hit in your 40s, you kind of look back and you're like, wow, like you've just received and gained so much experience and wisdom. You're like, yeah, it's true. Like all that was worth it even until now. It was worth it. Right. So it's interesting. It's like when you hit your 40s, you know something is true. And even no matter, you'll realize why pre-dawn is important. You'll realize why evangelism is important. You'll realize why lecturing is important. All these things are very, very important. Right. So after listening to this, one of the things that was really shocking to me is when he said, the new history can't be made with just the Bible. I was like, whoa, like that is controversial, almost heretical, don't you think? When he said, the new history's not made with just the Bible. And I was like, oh. And he says, you need the new word. And I was like, wait a second. Well, that's true. Because even in the New Testament time, Jesus came. You can't, if the new history could be made with just the Old Testament, then they could have made the new history already, right? They would have already made it. But Jesus had to bring the new word to make the New Testament, right? And it's true. You can't make the new history not with just the Bible itself. And back then, at Jesus' time, the Bible was the Old Testament, but he had to add on the New Testament because when the Messiah comes, bringing the new word, right, then you can make the new history. At the beginning, it's kind of like, whoa, isn't that kind of heretical? Like, it's not made just with the Bible, but it has to be the new word. But that's exactly what it was like at the Old Testament time also. So I was like, wow, that's really, really true. Right. So, and the one part, also another part, it almost seems like he knew that there were some newcomers listening to the message. He knew it. He really did. Because he's like, you have to know my mission clearly. You got to pray about it, right? You got to pray about it and know it and ask, and then you'll clearly know who I am, right? So he was talking to people who were brand new, like he knows that there are some new people watching. It was almost like a very spiritual thing. Right? A lot of times we might think to ourselves, oh no, is he saying to me that I don't know him clearly? And no, sometimes the Holy Son is speaking directly through him for someone who is watching. And I was like, wow, there must be someone out there who's brand new that's listening to the message, and he just busts it out, right? He's talking about like, the Holy Son, people thought it was God in Christianity, but then Jesus died. If he was God, how could he die? And people get tested by Jesus dying, right? How could he die? Right? So I was just listening like, wow, it's common sense. So, we have to be the ones that understand, man, the wisdom that he gave during that morning message, there's that one thing that it was like, sometimes you need to incur losses to gain. That's a hard one. But then he gave the hint and he says, why? Because I'll lose now, but the next time it is my turn, right? And it's like, ooh, that's interesting, because even if you look on the negative side, if you look like, because this is a theory that works both ways, right? When it comes to con artists, these big con artists, because he talked about con artists, it's hard to see them, right? He says when con artists too, they will do these things where they will lose something, but they'll gain big later on, right? And it's very interesting because Jesus lost his life, but gained huge, right? Even though he lost his own life. You incur losses in the present for something that's a future gain. And like he said, it will be my turn next time, right? So it's very interesting how you're going to lose. But we're thinking to ourselves, you got to always gain. Once you lose, it's not good. But no, sometimes you need to lose first in order to gain something much, much bigger in the future, right? Like a con artist will lose something to gain trust, and then they will give even more, and then they'll gain, and they'll be able to con that person even better, right? But if you think about it, it's the same with everything in life. It's just a matter if you're using it for good or using it for evil, right? Sometimes we do have to lose. And you might think that you're losing. Oh, no, you lost. Oh, it's such a terrible thing. But no, it's about the future. And that's why it's kind of interesting, because sometimes people do lose when they listen to Sunseed, but we don't know what the future is, what's going to be the big gain much, much later on. And this is why, Sunseed was talking about you got to empty yourself in order to discern well. Because think about it. You're discerning, but you're losing money or you're losing something. You're like, oh my gosh, this is wrong. But he's like, no, empty yourself. Because sometimes you have to lose now to gain something bigger in the future, right? Sometimes like even for children have to empty themselves, lose their freedom now so that they can gain something better in the future by listening to their parents, right? And we have to empty ourselves to see what God is doing, attach ourselves to God, and we have to be working with God all the time, right? Because what is it? Extreme blessing happens from extreme situations. So that's why we can't give up during tribulation. Because what if you're setting a condition and working towards something that is absolutely amazing in the future, right? And that's why we can't give up during the tribulation, right? Think about what Sunseem, the example he gave was, I was in prison, but that's when we gained the most churches while I was going through tribulation. You can't give up during that time. And that is like an absolute, that is a testimony within itself. I thought that was quite incredible when you think about that. He was losing time, he was in prison, all these other different things. But during that time, gained so much. Like what? During that time, he says that I couldn't pray like I did when I was in prison. I couldn't. The amount and the sincere, the desperation of prayer. And then you were to, of course, the biggest thing was gaining the rapture while he was there, gaining churches while he was there, learning the words of the complete testament time, whether it's about the rapture, whether it's about the Holy Son, the soul entity, like these things were all done during the time while he was in intense tribulation. You incur losses for future gain. And we may not understand it, but he's just talking about it, but he won't tell us directly exactly what that means, right? Because, think about it, guys. Why is it so hard to discern? Because it's not so easy, oh, this is good and that's wrong. It's not that easy. Everything has pros and cons, and that's why it's hard to discern, because you're looking at, well, this is good, but this is not good. And this is bad, but then this is also good. So which one is right? And that's why we struggle trying to figure out which one's the right one. And that's why we have to pray, attach ourselves to God, empty ourselves, right? And it's kind of that last thing that he said that was really so focused. He's like, ask the Holy Spirit to be with you. Always discern with absolute wisdom. So you need grace from the Holy Spirit. You got to keep calling the Holy Spirit, and you have to realize how big and a tremendous of a thing it is to ask the Holy Spirit. So ask one by one in detail to the Holy Spirit constantly. You have to realize how big that truly and that really is. Okay? So I hope that all of us here too will understand this in a better way, understanding it much more clearly. And that we'll be able to know how much better, how much more we have to do at this time. So I was really, really happy during the Tuesday pre-dawn message, and I hope that you guys have even more realizations more and more, okay? So that was a Tuesday morning message. Hope you guys really enjoyed it, which leads us into the last song of choice for today. And we're going to go into a great song because I was inspired by meeting a newcomer last night. Such a great conversation. It was 3 hours, but, we have to realize, we'll talk about it a little bit later after this song, but this is a great song. It's a cover. It was originally done in 1982, but it was redone in 1986, covered by Dionne Warwick, Stevie Wonder, Elton John, and Gladys Knight. Great song. Those of you guys, a lot of you will know this song, well, especially those my age. The song is called That's What Friends Are For.
Never thought I'd feel this way. And as far as I'm concerned, I'm glad I got the chance to say that I do believe I love you. And if I should ever go away, well then close your eyes and try feel the way we do today. And then if you can
for sure. That's what friends are for. In good times, in bad times, I'll be on your side forevermore. Oh, that's what friends are for. Keep smiling, keep shining, knowing you can always count on me. For sure, that's what friends are for good times and bad times, I'll be on your side forevermore. That's what friends are for. Keep smiling, keep shining, know you can always count on me. Oh, for sure, 'cause I tell you that's what friends are for. For good times and for bad times, I'll be on your side forevermore. That's what friends are for. Yeah. That's what friends are for. Smiling, smiling, shining, shining. On me for sure. Out on me for sure. Out on me for sure. That's what friends are for. Smiling, shining.
And yes, that was it. Such a great song. Reminds me of the past way back in the 80s. Very, very good song. That's what friends are for. That one went straight to the top. Great song. It reminds me of the past, but it reminds me of how important it is to have friends. And this is something I want to talk about for this last section for today, about friends. What are friends for? And the reason I'm bringing this up is because I was talking to a newcomer. Like I do my what do you call it? I do my Monday Zoom Bible studies. We have like anywhere, like in the beginning in section 1, we had like 120 people coming out, and we go section 2 a little bit more deeper, and it's about like anywhere from 70 to 80 coming out, right? But anywhere from like 65 to 80 people that come out to this one. We just finished section 2. We're gonna take a 1 week break, and then we're gonna start section 3 with like the big guns we're gonna talk about in the next one, right? Like the resurrection and the rapture, Satan principle, all these other different ones here too. I'm not sure how deep I'm going to go into the other ones, like fall and purpose of creation. I'm not sure yet, but I was talking to this person, and I just realized, especially in this world, of course, we're living, we have to live the spiritual life and becoming people close to God, and we have to be spiritual. We have to pray, tell God all the other different things, but we also have to remember that we are physical bodies. And of course, like especially during this pandemic, we realize how important it is for the conversations that we need with others. You know what I mean? Like we need that conversation. And it's something that I was like, wow. And when I was talking to this person had a lot of questions about God. But after those questions, they basically just open up. They're like, you see how much these people are like need someone to connect to. Right? Like they don't need like someone to be telling them you should pray. Oh, your problem is you didn't pray enough. The problem is you have sin. Like it's none of these things. People just need friends. And I realize sometimes in Providence, we get too spiritual. Too spiritual meaning like everything has like, when you meet a newcomer, you have to bring up Son's name and you have to connect them to the, it's like, well, really? Like one thing I really loved about this week's message, Son seems like, don't rush it, right? Don't rush it. There's sometimes you just got to talk to people, right? See what's going on in their life. And it's not about, well, did you pray or did you do this? Like sometimes people just need a friend. And a friend is someone that they can just talk to, connect to emotionally, connect to mentally. Not someone telling them what's wrong with them, what they didn't do, but just someone to talk to. And 2 things happened just yesterday. And number 1 is I started like a cafe hopping club, and I just, in Malaysia, I just meet people and then I connect with them. And then I say, hey, you want to go? We're going to go cafe hopping next week. What do you guys think? And all we do is we meet people and we just talk. Like I meet like these married people, like these two sisters, and they have children. They have a business. We just sit there and talk. And the most amazing thing is I'm not sure about you guys, but I don't have many of these conversations in Providence. I'm not sure about you guys. I just don't. Like it almost feels like in Providence, it feels like you have to, like the conversation is useless and meaningless if I did not talk about the Lord, if I did not talk about my prayer, if I did not talk about the word, then it's a waste of time. Like I have actually seen people who will not go out with like other members, like on a hiking trip or whatever, because there's no newcomers there and they feel it's a waste of time. And I'm like, really? Like, we need friends. Like we need people to talk to. We need people that we can open up to. We need people that can just talk normally. You know what I mean? And I realized like I almost feel like we're almost lacking that. Like, and I feel like even for myself, because I am a pastor and a leader, like people do have that type of expectation. I think it's almost unfair, to be honest. I really do. Like that I have to prepare myself and be, because I remember even Pastor Joan once talked about this too, is like sometimes there's pressure because everyone, when they're with Pastor Joan, just kind of look at her, expecting her to give something deep from the word, where sometimes like we lose like that friend aspect where you could just talk normally, right? Where there's not pressure. And this is why even for myself, sometimes I have a hard time just like living with regular members, honestly, because sometimes you have to put up a front the whole time, like, you have to be at the, I can't make jokes. I can't do this. I can't, like, how do I know that? Is because sometimes when I tell a joke, people are like shocked, like, oh, you're a pastor and you're telling jokes. Oh, you're so funny for a pastor. I'm like, for a pastor? Like, what about just a human being, right? Can't we just like be human beings? Like sometimes just talk and joke around and play games, whatever. And it's, you know, of course there's a line that you can't cross, obviously, but I found that like, honestly, I was thinking to myself, like when I was talking just to these two sisters that were like married and everything else, just talking about their kids and talking about their family, I almost felt more comfortable. Like there was no pressure on me. There was no burden. It was just like I can talk to them normally. And I was like, you know what? I almost want to talk to them more than I want to talk to members, as sad as that sounds, because I felt that like there's this burden, this pressure that comes with, you know, with sometimes because I'm a pastor or sometimes because they expect something from me. But everyone needs friends. And we have to understand that we need people that we can just talk to and just be like a human. And it's something I think that, you know, that this is what friends are for. And that's why I played that song after having that conversation with a newcomer, after just answering their questions. They just needed to talk. And they talked about like they were lonely. And I was like, wow, you know, people, you know, even people inside Providence are lonely. They're lonely because the talk is like reserved and stuck to this only spirit. It's like way too spiritual sometimes. And I think we really need to, you know, have fun, talk, being able to open up, say the things that we're bothered by, say the things that we're struggling with. And this would really open up if we start to have like real friends in Providence too. Like I'm talking real friends as like you can talk at a normal level. But I'm not sure what you guys think about this. But if you guys think of the same thing, go ahead and write that in the comments. I'd love to hear about it too. But that's what I was thinking about when I was meeting. Like I met people for like yesterday, 3 hours with the one of the newcomers, and then another like 2 hours with another with those sisters, those married sisters at the cafe hop, whatever it is, and it was just amazing. And I hope it's something that we can think about also. Okay, just like how we can make it more real and human as we talk to each other in Providence. Like not everything has to be about, well, what did you think about the word, or did you pray well? You know, it's kind of like we gotta kind of think a little bit more humanly. That's kind of the word that comes to my mind. Either way, those are my thoughts for today. Hope that it's something that can, strike a conversation with you guys too. All right? Which means that we're here at the end of today's podcast. Hope you guys really enjoyed it today. Have an amazing and awesome service tonight. Really, guys, if anything else, encourage your head leaders after they preach. Write them, tell them how well they did, because there's always something well that they did. Almost all the effort they're putting in, you should be able to catch something there, right? everyone is not, there's no such thing as a terrible like sermon. We all have the good parts inside of it. Oh, thank you so much. I really enjoyed this part. And guys, we need to encourage each other a lot, especially our head leaders, because leadership is a very lonely path. So guys, pray for them for tomorrow's message, and also make sure you encourage them, text them after, tell them what they did right, and tell them what you were really inspired by. All right? Everyone, have an amazing Wednesday service tonight, and we'll see you guys again tomorrow on the Morning Star Drive on 117.8.
It's the Morning Star Drive 117.8. You soaring up with sky, now's the time, don't delay. I'm sitting in my ride and it's time to fly. So let's realign, just listen and fill your mind.
I'm burning with desire and the passion. Nobody can stop me when I'm like this. I got my head in the zone, you know. I'm on the Morning Star Drive, you know. I'm burning with desire and the passion. Nobody can stop me when I'm